We're leaving soon on a trip, and I'm sure that you have as much trouble as I do when deciding what to take and how to pack it. We're leaving for Europe. We'll be the guests of Viking Cruises on a Rhine getaway from Basel to Amsterdam. Of course, we've looked through the brochures, the guidebooks, and we've checked out all the details online. We've booked our excursions, which include several opportunities to sample the local beverages that make the Rhine such an appealing destination. But my first thought is photography. From cathedrals and castles on hilltops to old town squares, I'm sure that we'll be treated to lots of eye candy as we travel. While we're away, I'm shooting photos with the Olympus OMD EM1 Mark II and video with the Panasonic GH5. It's a nice combination as they share the micro 4/3 lens mount. So I'm taking the 12mm f2 Olympus Prime and the 25mm f1.4 Panasonic Prime. The Olympus has the 12-100 f4 zoom lens. Panasonic, I've got the 12-35 f2.8. Now, if all of that seems pretty wide, these are micro 4/3 lenses, so the 35mm equivalent is double the number. But also, I'm a wide kind of guy. Now, the stills I take usually end up in a photo book. I typically use Blurb. We really enjoy these books of photos and memories. On video, although I understand that you appreciate them and much of my footage does find its way onto YouTube, video is a more complicated, although for me, a more enjoyable pastime. But either way, if you take photos or if you take video, you have to be committed to a certain amount of post-production work to get the images and the footage that you've taken to final output. Now, last thing, a Dji Maverick on loan from B&H Photo, along with a couple of spare batteries and propellers. I've dedicated the Alcatel Idol 4, which has a nice bright screen, for the controller. Oh, and as required by the new German regulations, I've affixed my contact information. But for regular stabilization, I'm taking the Zhiyun crane mounted on a small Vanguard VS82 tripod, so I can set it down. And if there's room when everything else gets in the suitcase, I've got the Mi Photo backpacker, which will also be useful to take those 50 megapixel images the M1 is capable of. Now, for details of all of these, use the description below. I do have some essential accessories, ND for video, and I've also got the Polar Pro Mavic kit. Cleaning supplies, I've got my lens cleaning cloths. Both Panasonic and Olympus provided them recently at events. And eyeglass cleaner in a small spritz bottle, which will get through security. Of course, I've got my DC Labs Chroma Selfie. I use it at the start of any scene where skin tone is important. And for video production, Panasonic provided their XLR adapter. So I'm also packing two Sony ECM44s so I can do some interviews. Now, I carry a notebook. This is old school. A Moleskine and a Parker T-ball jotter. I've also got a flashlight with a head strap. Now, we're planning to carry on for our flights, and although the veranda suite on the Viking Hlin, am I pronouncing that correctly, looks spacious, always minimal is best. Hopefully, after I get all this gear in, I'll have some room in the suitcase for clean underwear. Now, I am fairly paranoid about storage and backup, and that means at least 2 SD cards for each camera and 2 external hard drives to back up the files. I back up daily, usually to each of the drives, and I travel with a MacBook Air. It has an SD card slot to copy the files. I make a full copy of each card every day, and then I reformat the card. So every day is a clean start. Much of the gear goes in a low pro backpack. I've had it for several years. It's spacious and nicely compartmentalized, but I also take a smaller camera bag to carry the second camera and lenses while I'm strolling around town. Of course, every camera has a charger. I wish more used USB, and I do take a small power bar. They generally go in the suitcase last, around the edges. Now, Viking boats have North American plugs, but when they're not available, a power bar is particularly useful because you only need one converter plug. Now, nearly all chargers are universal and will work with all international power sources. Wow! Now, to hope that I'm not over the weight limit, but there's not much I can do about that.